Welcome to the Falcon Fury.
Warner Brothers finally dropped their new dive into an old IP with Scoob, a movie based on the old Scooby-Doo franchise that's had its ups and downs and just plain wise. This movie had a fair share of raised brows, with the trailers having a more, shall we say, dated feel to them, as well as having a bunch of Hanna-Barbera characters put in it for reasons. Plus, it didn't help that major plot points of the movie were spoiled early online. Now, I'm one of those people that believes in going into a film with a clear mind and not wanting to hate it right off the bat. I avoided the spoilers because I feel I should see the film in its truest form, because otherwise I'm just doing a disservice to the people that worked hard on it. That being said, I don't want to give the impression that I like this movie. The story revolves around Scooby and the gang having to team up with Blue Falcon and stop Dick Dastardly from unleashing Cerberus upon the world. You can already tell a big problem here. They went the route of having this big world-destroying plot that just doesn't work with a Scooby-Doo movie. They've done it well with Mystery Inc., yes, but that's because that was a series that built up to it properly. Here, it feels like this was meant for original characters to face this type of challenge, but they just slapped Scooby and the gang and a bunch of other Hanna-Barbera characters to it. It doesn't help that this movie had 7 writers for it. That makes it very clear that too many people had their hands on it and the director couldn't keep it fully together. Just so many ideas and none of them really come together here at all. They don't even have a mystery in this movie to solve. Imagine that, making a Scooby-Doo movie without a mystery. They let you know straight up who the villain is, even in the trailers, which just isn't Scooby-Doo. I've said this before, but if you're going to do a different interpretation of a beloved franchise, you have to capture the spirit of it, and mystery is the spirit of Scooby-Doo. Without it, it's something completely different. For Scooby's return to the big screen, this shouldn't have been as big as it is. It was clearly trying to set up a shared cinematic universe, but you know what's wrong here? Warner Brothers already tried this. Hell, The Mummy did this and they flopped completely. Marvel made it clear with Phase 1. Make the stand alone and focus on making that good, and just have an end credit sequence that's supposed to build to the big crossover movie. Like, this is not a hard formula to figure out. The Hanna-Barbera characters just felt shoehorned in and don't mesh well. You got Blue Falcon, who I'd be more mad at if they used the OG, but they make it clear it's just his son, but that still doesn't make me like him. He just has that dude bro attitude that feels pretty weak. Plus, he takes too much time for a movie about Scooby-Doo. And then there's Dynamite, who instead of being that goofball sidekick, he's now very snarky and actually sort of competent, but it's like, why did you need to change him? He was perfectly fine the way he was. Then there's Dee Dee, who used to be part of Captain Caveman's crew, but now is for some reason Blue Falcon's assistant. It really makes no sense. It was just kind of an odd change. It's like, why not just make an original character and have her be the assistant? Like, it's just odd. Dick Dastardly is done alright, but having him have robot minions and being abusive to them just feels weird. He gets mad at them for being incompetent, but he's the one who built them, so you're left thinking, why did you make them incompetent? If you're going to get mad at incompetence, don't make your robots incompetent. Like, that just makes you question him. He's not terrible in terms of his characterization. He seems fairly faithful, just sort of that wacky villain, but it's still kind of odd when he's just being angry at the robots. It's just strange. Now here's a good friend of mine who wasn't feeling too hot about this movie. To give his words of wisdom, ladies and gentlemen, Jake Neutron.
Look, maybe I'm mad because I spent $25 on this and that's like 2 meals I lost for a mediocre film. Maybe it's because I was legitimately looking forward to this movie and liked some of its advertisements. Maybe it's because Trolls World Tour blew my mind when it really didn't need to, so I was expecting to at least have some fun with something like Scoob. Or maybe it's because this movie is boring, its jokes had me stone-faced, and its characters really didn't get to shine as much as you'd expect. Like, one of the things about the adverts I liked was the focus on the gang and how they looked like friends, or when they emphasized their friendship. But they kinda spend a majority of the movie split up after like 10 minutes of them happenstancing into each other. Hey, that sucks. The movie tries to both make the separation of the gang emotional and the jealousy Shaggy has for Scooby emotional, and like, Velma, Daphne, and Fred really early on in the movie are in talks with Simon Cowell. on turning Mystery Incorporated into a real business. And during this meeting in the diner, Simon calls out Shaggy and Scooby on not being serious or something. Instantly, the three defend them and say that they're their friends, and they can't do the business without them. But Shaggy and Scoob storm out with shattered egos. And that's the last the crew sees each other for a good chunk of the movie, because Shaggy and Scoob get abducted. But the movie keeps trying to push that these three betrayed Shaggy and Scooby when they didn't do anything wrong. In fact, they were trying to talk to them, and like Shaggy and Scooby were like, "No, I don't want to hear anything about it." Then later in the movie, Shaggy starts developing this inferiority complex towards Scooby, since everyone keeps pointing out only when Scoob and Shaggy is insignificant to him, which is only made worse when the Blue Falcon gives Scooby a super suit and not Shaggy for effectively no reason besides Nick doesn't care about Shaggy. Shaggy then starts taking this out on Scoob with backhanded comments and trying to force Scooby to stay with him with some really toxic ultimatum. It's me or saving the world, basically. Legitimately, through this movie, Shaggy's just a terrible, awful friend. God, how they massacred the boy.
It really hurts him here because it's the end of the fucking world. Why are you making your best friend choose between that? It just takes you completely out of Shaggy as a character. He's just too cowardly and pretty awful friend to the point you kind of don't want him and Scooby to make up in the end.
You know, I'm now realizing how annoying Shaggy is in this movie, and I don't really want to unpack that. I guess I could complain about the animation, because the designs are cool and all, something about the animation feels purely sculpted. I don't know, it feels like it's trying to be like Hotel Transylvania, but is holding its exaggeration and motion back. This movie's humor and animation is slow by just a little bit, but it's noticeable.
Yeah, good point. The animation tries to have its cake and eat it too by being bendy and rubbery while having slapstick, which just doesn't work. The characters need to be solid in order for the big impacts to matter, but with them being like rubber, it's the equivalent to putty getting mushed. There's just no weight to it. Now, to address the elephant in the room, the voices. They went with celebrities this time around, with the exception of Scooby, and they just don't work here. Zac Efron doesn't really have a presence, nor does any of the other gang's voices. Shaggy gets the worst here with Will Forte, who, I'm just gonna say it, never should voice Shaggy again. I think he is a funny actor. I loved him in Last Man on Earth, but he was just not made to play Shaggy. His attempt to voice him just comes off as a cheap imitation. Should have just simply went with the cast that's been used for damn near 20 years. Matthew Lillard is basically perfect as Shaggy nowadays. They went with celebrities just to try to make it a bit more appealing to adults, but that just doesn't work. It falls flat because this doesn't work as a Scooby-Doo movie.
Besides saying the jokes are not very well constructed, I've got nothing else to say besides the movie was boring. It's a real rip, fam.
Overall, this movie feels like a mix between corporate shilling and too many creatives with a director that didn't know how to reel it all in to make it something more coherent. Like, there just were too many cooks in the kitchen, and that didn't make their ideas mesh properly. Honestly, if you want to see Hanna-Barbera characters meet, just wait for C.H. Greenblatt's Jellystone series coming later in the near future. There's no reason to watch this just to see your favorite characters, cause they kind of change them, not for the better. The ending I won't spoil, but I'll tell you it pulls a Lord of the Rings with multiple endings, except they just don't fit at all and just pads everything out. This movie is not the worst thing you'll see. It can work as a simple distraction for kids, but I'm pretty sure they'll likely get up and do something else in like 5 minutes of watching it. For adults who love Scooby-Doo as a kid, this is one dog that should go straight to the pound.
Thank you.